So picture this, 1917. One of the most powerful empires on the planet, an empire ruled by a single family for centuries, just evaporates. How does a system that seems so permanent, so unshakable, completely collapse practically overnight?
304 years. Let that sink in. For 304 years, the Romanov dynasty held absolute, total power over the enormous Russian Empire. An unbroken line of czars, it really seemed like an institution that would last forever.
I mean, that's 3 centuries of what felt like unbreakable imperial power, stretching all the way from the 1600s into the modern age.
And then, in the chaos of February 1917, it was just over, gone. So how on earth did it all fall apart so quickly?
Well, the answer really starts with one massive, overwhelming event, the First World War. It was the incredible strain of this modern war that finally broke the back of the old Russian order.
You see, the war created what you can only call a perfect storm. Russia's economy was way too backward to keep up with the modern industrial conflict. And this wasn't just a military problem, you have to understand, it was a total societal collapse. While the front was literally disintegrating, we're talking 1.5 million soldiers just walked away in 1916. Back home, the cities were imploding from starvation and chaos.
And right in the middle of this escalating crisis, Tsar Nicholas makes an absolutely disastrous decision. By taking personal command of the army, he basically tied the monarchy's fate directly to the war's outcome. From that moment on, every military defeat, every casualties list was his personal failure.
So after the Tsar finally abdicates, a new government pops up. But, it was born weak, it was divided, and it was pretty much doomed from the start. It was like a government of ghosts with no real power to speak of.
This created a totally paralyzing situation known as dual power. Think of it like this. On one side, you have the official provisional government, made up of the old elite who were desperate to keep the war going. But the real power, the people who actually controlled the soldiers and the workers, that was the Petrograd Soviet, and they wanted peace immediately. These two groups were on a total collision course.
So the new leader, a guy named Alexander Kerensky, decides to make this huge gamble. He figures, hey, maybe one last big military victory could unite the country behind me and make my government legit. It was an incredibly high-stakes bet that would, well, decide the fate of Russia.
And just as Kerensky is betting everything on the war, a new player arrives back in Russia, from exile, Vladimir Lenin, a man with a totally different plan, a plan that was radical, simple, and absolutely uncompromising.
From the second he stepped off the train, Lenin was crystal clear about what he was there to do. He wasn't interested in negotiating or compromising. Nope, he was there to take power. As he saw it, history wasn't going to wait.
And this is where Lenin's political genius really shines. While all the other leaders were debating complex political ideas, Lenin just sliced through the noise with a brilliantly simple and powerful promise: peace, land, and bread. It wasn't abstract theory, it spoke directly to what people were desperate for. And he capped it with a clear call to action: all power to the Soviets. Honestly, it was a masterstroke of political messaging.
So, Kerensky's big military gamble, it backfired. Spectacularly. The offensive failed, and it just shattered whatever little authority his government had left. And in the chaotic summer that followed, a series of just fatal errors would basically hand power directly to his enemies.
This leads to one of the most bizarre and self-defeating chapters in history, the Kornilov affair. Okay, get this. First, Kerensky fears the Bolsheviks, so he asks a general named Kornilov for military help. Then, he gets paranoid that Kornilov is going to set up his own military dictatorship. So, in a complete panic, he frees the Bolsheviks he had just locked up and gives them guns to stop the general. It's an unbelievable strategic blunder.
The outcome was just catastrophic for Kerensky. His government was left looking totally powerless. And the Bolsheviks, the guys who were just disgraced and in prison, they're now hailed as heroes who saved the revolution. And, most importantly, they now have weapons. The entire balance of power had just flipped on its head.
So all of this sets the stage for the final act. The government is powerless, the Bolsheviks are armed and organized, and now they move to fill that power vacuum they helped create.
By October, there really wasn't much of a government left to overthrow. Kerensky had lost the support of pretty much everyone. The left, the right, the army. There was just this empty space where power was supposed to be.
And here's how they filled that vacuum. It's probably best to think of it as a two-man operation, Lenin's will and Trotsky's hands.
Lenin was the architect. He provided the relentless, single-minded ideological drive to seize power now. But it was Trotsky, the brilliant, hands-on organizer, who actually put the plan into action.
Now this is super important to understand. The October Revolution wasn't some grand battle or a massive popular uprising like in the movies. It was a swift, targeted coup. Trotsky's forces didn't storm the palace in a huge fight. They basically just walked in and took over the key points of the city: the telegraph offices, train stations, bridges. Power was seized not with a bang, but because there was almost no one left to stop them.
So, the Bolsheviks had their empire, but from the very first moments, the new state they were building was a complete paradox, a contradiction that would come to define the rest of the 20th century.
And you can see this deep contradiction in their very first actions. On one hand, they issued some of the most progressive decrees the world had ever seen: an 8-hour workday, land for the peasants, legal equality for women. Amazing stuff, right? But in the very same breath, they were banning any newspapers that disagreed with them, creating a terrifying secret police, the Cheka, and making it clear there would only be one party in charge.
And that, right there, is the paradox at the heart of 1917. It's the question that would echo through the entire 20th century. Was this a revolution to liberate the people, or was it one designed to control them? From its very first day, the new state was both liberating and oppressive. And that contradiction, well, that would go on to shape everything that came next.